Good morning, everyone. What a glorious day it is here in southeastern Pennsylvania, and I hope wherever you are, it is a beautiful day as well. I am the Reverend Peter Friedrichs, and I welcome you to our Sunday virtual service. It is great to have you with us today, no matter where you are. Today, leading worship, we have myself, Chrissy Bushyager, our Director of Religious Education, and Bob Rowland, our Music Director, the usual crew. And we also have Don Sloat, who is running our Zoom tech today. So thank you, Don, for all of that. Just a few reminders before we get started with worship. The first one is that if you are new to our community, first of all, you're welcome. You're most welcome to be here, and we are glad to have you. If you want to get onto our mailing list so that you can be notified of what's going on in the church, go to our website, uucdc.org, and you can click the button for newcomers and give us your contact information. And that way we can stay in touch. So it is great to have you here. I also want to remind you that if you have a camera for participating in Zoom, you can turn that camera on. And if your name is something other than your name in your window, and you know how to change your name, and you want to change your name, I invite you to do that as well. Chrissy, you have some other tips and tricks for people for using Zoom this morning?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My weekly reminder that we do have captions available, closed captioning. If you click on the bottom of your screen, there's a little button where you can turn on subtitles or transcript. It depends on what version of Zoom you're running or what device you're using what that is. But you'll be able to turn on captioning if that is something that helps you. And Peter, are we doing coffee hour today
We
or
are.
not okay.
Yeah, we're going to do coffee hour. There is virtual coffee hour after the service. Stick around if you'd like to meet with a small group of people. You'll be randomly assigned to a breakout room. We do have, the reason Chrissy was asking is because we have our annual congregational meeting at 11:30 today. So to attend the congregational meeting, you'll need to log out of this meeting and into another Zoom meeting. And information for that is in the What's Happening, which you I think was linked in our chat by Jen Goldberg, as she does every week. Thank you, Jen. So yes, we will have time for coffee hour after the service, and then we will reconvene at the other Zoom room for our annual meeting at 11:30. Chrissy?
Oh, sorry.
I think you're up.
I am up. All right, let us begin our worship service by reciting our covenant together. Enriched by our differences and joined together in our search for meaning, we covenant with ourselves and each other to seek truth in a spirit of love, to strive for justice, and to serve others with a joyful heart. And I now welcome the Rayfield family to light our chalice for us this morning.
Morning.
Can you tell him?
Go ahead, Sam.
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our power to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse.
That's weird.
Thank you so much. That was wonderfully done, all you Rayfields. Let us now move deeper into our worship service by singing together our centering song. We sing it through along with the UUCDC choir 3 times.
There is a love
throughout this pandemic, we have been resting in this love that extends beyond the reach of our arms, beyond the miles and distance that separates us. And now, as we are beginning to make our way back, we can actually use our arms to hug and to rest in the love of each other. And yet still, we have joys, we have sorrows in our community that need to be shared. And so we offer this time in the service to share our joys and sorrows. We do that by using the chat. And we ask you now, if you have a joy to share with the community, something that's lifting you up, please enter it into the chat. And while many of us are celebrating a return to some sense of connection and community and belonging, we know there are those who still feel isolated and alone, those who are suffering their sorrows. If you would like to share a sorrow, something that is weighing you down, you may do so in the chat. And in so doing, know that you don't carry that burden alone. Please join me now in a time of prayer. Spirit of life, great and gracious God, breath that moves in and out of us, spirit that wends its way among us. As we enter a new season shortly, it feels like summer. It will be summer soon, and it is somewhat of a summertime of our souls, a time when many are rejoicing because we can be together again in so many ways, to feel arms around us once again, to see unmasked smiles, to be able to read the joy on one another's faces. Graduations, road trips, birthdays, so many causes for celebration that we have missed for so long. Let us rejoice in all these coming together. Let us rejoice in one another's company. Let us rejoice for having survived. And yet, among all this rejoicing, let us not forget those who are not there yet. those around the world, particularly in India, who are still suffering from this virus, where vaccines, anywhere in the world where vaccines are inadequate and not well distributed. We are still losing brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, mothers, fathers. We cannot forget that there are those among us who still live in fear. Let us also not forget those who are suffering from war, the devastation of conflict, particularly at this moment in the Middle East. May they find some semblance of peace. May they find a way to reconciliation, even when it seems hopeless. May this time in which we are together across the miles be one of inspiration, one of fulfillment, one of rejoicing, perhaps just a moment of calm in the storm. Because we are together, we create this community of love and hope and courage and justice. May we always be instruments of peace. May we strive to make peace. May we strive to be peace. We offer up these prayers in the name of all that is holy and in all the holy names. Amen. And now the UUCDC Virtual Choir will lead us in the singing of Spirit of Life. We are continuing our theme of story this month and telling some timeless tales. So this is another one of my favorites. Once upon a time, there was a wise abbot of a monastery who was friends with an equally wise rabbi. This was a long time ago in the old country when times were hard, but just at that moment, times were especially hard. The abbot's community was dwindling, and his monks were fearful and weak and anxious. Their souls were not in a good place. He went to his friend and wept. His friend, the rabbi, comforted him, and then he said, "There is something you need to know, my brother. We have long known in the Jewish community that the Messiah is one of you." "What?" said the rabbi, or said the abbot. "What? The Messiah is one of us? How can this be?" But the rabbi insisted that it was so, and the abbot went back to the monastery wondering and praying, comforted and excited for the first time in a very long time. Once back at the monastery, he would pass by his brother monks and wonder if this was the one. Sitting in chapel, praying, he would hear a voice and look intently in the face of that person and wonder, is he the one? The abbot had always been kind, but now he began to treat his brothers with a profound kindness and kind of like an awe, a deep, deep respect, reverence even. Soon, his brothers noticed, came to him and asked what had happened.
It took a little while, but the abbot told him eventually what the rabbi had said. Soon the other monks were looking at their brothers differently too, with deeper respect and with wondering, with a sense of wonder. The story spread quickly. The Messiah is one of us. The monastery was suddenly full of life, worship, grace, love. Their prayer life was rich and passionate, and their services were alive and vibrant. People from the community wanted to come in, wanted to be in this place. Many of them joined the community of monks, and when they took their vows, they were told the story, the mystery, the truth that their life was based on. The Messiah is one of us. The monastery grew and expanded into house and house, and the monks grew in wisdom and grace before each other and in the eyes of God. And they say still, if you stumble upon this place where there is love and hope and kindness and graciousness, the secret is the same. The Messiah is one of us. Thank you for listening to my story today.
Thank you, Chrissy. I love that story too. It's one of my favorites as well. Now is the time in our service when we take up our offering to support this church and its work in the world. We have the slide from earlier this month that tells about our community partner for Share the Plate, which is Anna's Place, which you can certainly contribute to anytime this month, but this isn't the second Sunday of the month, so we are taking a collection for the church itself. And so you can use the same number on your smartphone. You can use that number to text the amount you'd like to donate to support the church. Thank you for your generous donation. Thank you, Bob, for your music. Thank you all for your generous donation to support this church and its work in the world. Now we're going to see just a brief video that shows us about how perception can change reality.
People often assume that our senses allow us to perceive the world as it actually is. However, what we perceive is not an accurate reflection of a real, externally existing world. In fact, perception and hallucination have a lot in common. Both depend on our brain's interpretation of noisy and ambiguous sensory signals. You could say that we're all hallucinating all the time, and when we agree about our hallucinations, that's what we call reality. Most of the time, we don't question the reality of our perceptions, since most of the time they seem real enough, and we all seem to perceive the same things. But sometimes this consensus breaks down dramatically, begging the question, what is real? Take the notorious dress from a few years ago. People violently disagreed about what color the dress really was, blue and black, or white and gold. Perceptual phenomena like this are vivid reminders of how much neurological guesswork happens behind the scenes to piece together our perceptions of the world. These perceptions are based partially on information we've learned over hundreds of thousands of years. A good example of this is the assumption that light generally comes from above. Few of us are aware of having this assumption, and yet it shapes how we see the world. If you look at an image of footprints in the sand, we perceive there to be an indentation The darker parts are shadows made by light shining from above. But if I show you this image, the footprints suddenly look embossed. The foot appears to be raised out of the ground. These perceptual conclusions are based on implicit assumptions about where light comes from. The prior predictions or implicit beliefs held by the brain are essential for any kind of perception at all. They are what turn the raw material of sensory data into our projected perceptual realities. When we look at an image like this, we at first just see some black and white splodges. But then if we look at this image, we can clearly see a woman and a horse. Now, if we look at the first image again, we can still see the horse and the woman. What's remarkable here is that the sensory input, the raw material, hasn't changed at all. All that's changed is your brain's prior expectations, and that changes what you consciously see. It's almost as if we can't perceive something unless we can imagine it. Unless we can imagine it, we cannot perceive it. All our perceptions are a kind of storytelling by the brain. And so, by shaping this process, storytelling itself has the power to change our perceptions. So we learn to experience the world in new ways. The art of storytelling here lies in finding the fringes, finding the edges of what people can imagine. You go too far, and your audience's prior beliefs can't handle the data you're giving them. Don't go far enough, and the experience is trivial. Perhaps great storytellers inherently know that a successful narrative doesn't work unless you engage the person, compelling them to be part of the process of making and remaking their perceptual worlds.
So there was clearly a lot of information packed into that video. And if you'd like to watch it again, there is a link in our What's Happening, so you can peruse it at your leisure. Have you ever had someone say something to you, make a simple statement or maybe offer an observation, and have it change the entire way that you think about something? I can remember clearly to this day when it happened to me back in high school. It was a social studies class, and we were studying American history. It was the early 70s, and my teacher, Fran Deraspinas, was a newly minted radical lefty fresh out of Harvard University. We were studying the westward expansion, the concept of manifest destiny, and the various treaties the American government was signing with Native American tribes. Now, I was a pretty straight-laced teenager growing up in a strongly Republican household, so my views at the time tended toward the conservative, if you can believe that now. But one day in class, Mr. D said something that I'd never considered and that I'll never forget. After learning about the various ways that the Native Americans had violated the terms of their treaties and, quote, gone off the reservation, both figuratively and literally, Mr. D said this: "And do you know how many times the American government violated the terms of the treaties with the Native Americans?" Then he went on to teach us about that, which I'm sure wasn't in the curriculum. It sounds obvious now, but to my 15-year-old brain, the concept was just mind-blowing. And I attribute my liberal, skeptical, questioning approach to nearly everything I see and do to that one simple statement by Mr. D. It was nothing short of transformative. And like our story today, it reminds us that changing our perspective can make a world of difference. Here was this sad and dejected people inhabiting this sad and dejected place, and with one small statement, the Messiah is one of us, it was completely transformed. Now, before I go any further, I want to acknowledge that mental health challenges are very, very real. I know that from experience myself, and that professional and medical intervention are often necessary to lift us out of depression, anxiety, and other mental health challenges. But there are times when all it takes is a simple statement, maybe a reframing of a situation to completely shift our outlook and our outcomes. As we heard in the video that we just watched, reality is a pretty fluid concept. It is the internal workings of our brain coupled with our experiences and evolution that mold and shape our reality. The video tells us We're all hallucinating all of the time. And when we agree about our hallucinations, that's what we call reality. While this may seem disconcerting at first, is nothing real? Is there no truth? What I find fascinating about it is that it says that there's a scientific basis for the notion that we can change our reality simply by changing our perception, our attitude, our approach, our perspective. Does this enable us to change the past? No, but it actually allows us to change the way our past experiences affect us. This is the basis of narrative therapy, which encourages us to tell a new story about what happened to us in the past, to reframe those events so that they perhaps will hold less power over us. All this month in our various church meetings, I've been asking people to share what I call a formational story with the group. A story that we were told as children that influenced our growing up, or maybe a story later in life. And what I observed in the telling and retelling of these stories was how the stories we tell ourselves have power, and how we tell them or how they were told to us affects our current reality. What's important to understand is that we have a choice about our stories, which means that we have the power not only to reshape the past, but to claim our future. When we reframe a story that we've told ourselves for years, we can do so in a way that frees us of the old story's power, which in turn empowers us to live into a new and different tomorrow. The Messiah is one of us shows us the way. The monastery was dying, the monks were depressed, they felt powerless and despondent. Then the rabbi told the abbot that one among them was the Messiah. This statement wasn't objectively true, but it changed the abbot's perception of his little band of brothers. And when others heard this same message, their perception of each other changed too. Suddenly, they began to treat each other differently, to look at each other through new eyes. They told themselves a new story about each other, and the entire community was lifted as a result, until it became a thriving spiritual center that attracted others from miles around. The monks' perception shaped their reality. When the perception was one of doom and gloom, that was the world they inhabited. When it was one of expectancy and hope, their world became one of possibility and potential. As we begin to emerge from this awful pandemic, what is the story that we'll tell of this time? What will we say about ourselves? What will we say about our own faith community and how it weathered this storm? Will we talk of all we've lost and how nothing will ever be the same? Or will we focus on the creativity, the purpose, and the passion that grew out of necessity? Will we talk in years to come of the drudgery of daily Zoom calls, or with gratitude for the existence of technology that allowed us to gather in this way? What will be the story of your pandemic experience? Choose wisely, for the tale we will tell will shape our future. Let us always remember the Messiah is one of us. Blessed be.
Oh, my life goes on in endless song of lover's lamentation. I hear the real, the far-off hymn that hails our new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear that music ring. It sounds an echo in my soul.
Storytelling is vital. As Peter just shared with us, the stories we tell help shape our understanding of reality. They give our minds a map and an outline for the information that we encounter. Stories are essential, and not just for individuals, but for communities. Consider our story from this morning. When the rabbi told the abbot that the Messiah is one of you, it changed the abbot's life. He began to interact with his fellow monks differently. He now began to treat all his brothers with profound kindness and awe, even deeper respect, even reverence. And that was very meaningful for the abbot. But the monastery as a whole, the community, did not change until the abbot told his story more widely. Only then did the monastery become known as the place where there is life and hope and kindness and graciousness. When he shared the story with everyone else, he shared a map to a different reality. Now, that may sound a little bit strange. Some of us may have grown up with the idea of reality being a thing, like big R reality, immutable, unchangeable, just what it is. The very rational part of my brain wants that big R reality to be in charge. It just feels more comfortable that way. But I've been around stories for too long to answer the siren song of big R reality. Let me tell you a story. When I was growing up, I received messages, both implicit and explicit, that some stories should not be told. Some stories are too messy, too inconvenient, too sad, too strange, too insignificant, too awkward, too painful, too blasphemous, too silly, too tacky, too much to be told. There is one narrative, there is one reality with a capital R, and the stories that conflict with that narrative should not be told. And then I read a book. I was a sophomore in college. I was an elementary ed major at the time. And I was babysitting for a baby whose family was from Sweden. And sometimes when the father would travel, the mom was uncomfortable being alone in the house at night. So I would just kind of stay there, not even really watching the baby, just staying in their house to be an extra person in the house. One night after the baby had gone to bed, I was settling into the guest room and I saw a book on the shelf. It was called Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, and it's by Jeanette Winterson. Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit is a fictionalized account of Winterson's lesbian coming out story within the context of her evangelical upbringing. It was a story that I knew deeply, knew in my bones. It was a story that I didn't know could be told, could be written, could be printed on paper and sold, and win prizes and be assigned reading in English lit classes all over the world. I didn't know that stuff when I first read it. All I knew was that I was encountering a story that shifted the narrative. The story gave me a new map. It changed the way that I envisioned the future. It adjusted reality. It's awesome that I found that story, and I found it at a time in my life when I really needed it. But what is even more awesome is that Jeanette Winterson told that story in direct defiance of all the messages she had growing up that told her not to tell it. She told her story. She did it for herself and for her community. A few years ago, I got this tattoo. It says, "Tell your stories." The tattoo artist used my handwriting as a template, and it's usually covered by my Fitbit band because it's not really a tattoo for everyone. It's just a note to myself that I needed to make permanent because I keep forgetting. Psychology tells us that telling stories helps us process the things that have happened in our lives. Listening to stories helps us build empathy and can help people in marginalized communities feel less alone. And the thing is, the stories that we tell don't have to be huge, memoir-worthy life stories. They don't have to be our deepest, darkest secrets. They can just be moments from our lives. let me tell you a story. 2 years ago, my daughter Vivian was in 4th grade. It was the end of the school year, the second to last day of school, actually, and she came home with a project she had done in art class. There had been a substitute teacher who instructed the kids to make a Father's Day card with a necktie on it. As soon as the teacher finished explaining the assignment, a boy in the class raised his hand and said, "Can I make the card for someone other than my father?" "No," the teacher responded. "You have to make a card for your father." Now, of course, Vivian has 2 moms, but she is not someone who likes to be in conflict with her teachers. So she did the assignment. The front of her finished card read, "I don't have a dad." The inside said, "But thanks, moms." I treasure that card to this day. As soon as she got home from school, I got on Facebook to tell that story to my friends because I was mad. And I was also super proud of Vivian for telling her truth on that card. And also because I wanted to do a little bit of reality shifting, to use my story to remind folks that yes, LGBTQ people still face regular discrimination in our lives. Do you know what happened? Several friends who were also parents at the school contacted the principal to complain. More voices were raised than just mine and my wife's. Reality shifted a little because of a story, because of my story. What are your stories? What stories do you have to tell that will foster empathy, shift a community, change reality? What stories do you have to tell that will bring hope and life and kindness and graciousness to the community? I know they are out there. I hope that you'll tell them. Amen. Now, please join me as we close with our hymn, "Come Sing a Song with Me."
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come tell a tale to me. Come tell a tale to me. Come tell a tale to me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Thank you, Bob. And now if you have a chalice lit at home or wherever you are, I invite you to extinguish that chalice. And even if you don't, please join in saying these words printed on your screen. Although we now extinguish our chalice flame, may we hold its warmth in our hearts in all the days ahead. Thank you, Chrissy, for your wonderful story and your reflection. Thank you, Bob, for the gift of your music and for leading the UUCDC virtual choir. Thank you, Don, for running Zoom today. We appreciate that. Just a couple of notes we want to make. As I said at the outset, we have our congregational meeting at 11:30 today. You will need to register and you'll get the link, the Zoom link for that. So Megan just posted the link. Copy it. Don't click on it because you'll leave this meeting right now if you click on it. So you can copy that and save it to paste it. We still are continuing with our community art project of painting stones that we are going to gather in to reflect on this time that we've had during the pandemic. The prompting question for painting a stone is, what has been your rock during this time? We also have our usual storytelling and show and tell for the kids and choir rehearsal every Thursday evening. And also, if you go to what's happening, there's more information there about today's service and about all of these goings on. Chrissy, do you have anything that you would like to add? There were a couple of questions in the chat during the service. One was about our youth bridging, and as Marge pointed out, we will be having a private bridging ceremony today that is just for people who've been invited, but we will be taping it, recording it, so that it will be shown during the youth service on June 6th. And the other question was about when will we get back together in person for Sunday mornings, and that is one of the things that will be addressed during the congregational meeting in some fashion today. The Pandemic Church Task Force has an update for everyone. I'm not trying to hide the ball on anyone, but encourage you to come to the congregational meeting to hear about that. So I think with that, we are going to allow you to unmute yourselves so that we can all say our benediction together. And we hold our hands up as virtual holding of hands as we say together. For those who come here seeking God,
God go with you.
For those who come
embracing
life,
life,
eternal affection.
those who come
seek path,
the way
Way
we
found.
the courage to take it.
step
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Ashe.
Stop yelling.